Hi, this is Steve Howe from Yes, and you're logged on to guitar.com. Why don't you check out my CD-ROM? It's called Steve Howe Interactive, and it combines my guitar collection book as well as a bonus, as well as a sort of masterclass. And also, of course, Homebrew 2 just came out. That's my mad home studio tracks. So I hope you continue having fun playing the guitar, learning the guitar. It never ends. I make music more or less because I like to, and I don't specify when or what it's for, or I just kind of get things down. So recording as I do in my little 8-track studio, which is mainly set up more like a sort of Les Paul, Chet Atkins studio than a sort of rock studio. It's just set up really around what I do. So I make these tapes and I sit on them, and somebody hears them and says, "Oh, I like that, let's put that on this record and let's collaborate." John writes the lyrics, or things change. So Homebrew was trying to describe, if you like, very, very accurately how this music sort of started, and the idea that that I record it and then sort of shelve it really until such time as it looks like part of something else. And I get collaborated on, obviously most famously with John Anderson, which is always a pleasure. And therefore that music also, from Keys to Ascension Volume 1 and 2, is featured on Homebrew 2, because that's one of the eras I looked at quite closely. Homebrew 1 had a central theme about Anderson, Booth and Wakeman Howe, just the tapes that I'd done for that album, or that became for that album. So Homebrew 2 touches quite heavily on Keys to Ascension. So I thought that was the Yes reference. And then I'd throw in something maybe from the 70s as well, some old recording of me playing. But what I'm looking for is, I don't want to put out tack, I'm not interested in doing that. I'd like to put out things that help explain, my music, my writing approach, and particularly, occasionally, like on the first volume of Homebrew, it was partly about my lyrical work as well, because that gets quite concealed. And for those that want to look at what was written, obviously they might see that I'd written certain things that they might have thought was written. In other words, I add lyrics to my music usually, and if it becomes a song, then some of my lyrics might stay. So it's quite intriguing for me to be able to get the opportunity to say, hey, this is how I saw it. It's almost like a very fulfilling thing. Sure, a demo, most demos are put in the bin and never heard. And I felt that there was something lacking in that direction for me, as far as my tapes having hours of work on them, quite niftily constructed on 8-track. Sometimes they're very elaborate things, other times very simple things. So, Homebrew is a continuing story of the way I write and the way I record at my own leisure, and it gets grouped together later.
So when you say that Homebrew 2 is kind of based around Keys to Ascension, so it's kind of a look at the musical thoughts that were going on, especially I suppose with the newer material.
That's right.
That came
it's just
out.
The studio tracks I'm referring to.
Right.
It says that on the CD, so I haven't clarified that exactly. But yeah, the studio tracks from Keys 2 were written at a time when I hadn't been writing with the guys in Yes, at that time at all. They'd done Talk. Union was another story altogether, and therefore it seems that when I was putting together Homebrew 2, it was nice again to have a central theme. The album's not about that at all, but a whole string of tracks, I think about 7 of them, are all the tapes that the guys heard and said, "Oh yeah, we'll stick that in this song," or I said, "Let's put this in there," And sometimes they didn't use all the piece, or sometimes we changed the piece so much, because most of Homebrew 2 is instrumental. There's only 3 songs out of the whole CD. So that instrumental work, obviously sometimes I think I get it better when I get it at home, when I'm sitting there playing. I think, oh, this is a nice idea, I'll do this. Band comes along and says, hey, we like this, let's play it. And sometimes I'm thinking, didn't really, nobody ever really noticed that the bass did this, or that the keyboards did that, or why didn't we keep that simple percussion? So it's not a get back. It's more of a fun thing to clarify.
So when you lay down your tracks at home, you're putting down guitar, bass, drums, keyboards?
Well, I mean, there's nothing I've ever done that's really exactly the same as the way I did it before. But often, if I'm doing the tempo is the first thing to establish for me, and I tend not to like to put down a drum kit. You know, I like to put down a click and start playing onto that click, playing, you know, inventing the ideas that will make the arrangement work, and. You know, so I've done it all different ways. I've started with a drum machine, you know, I've started with all these intricate patterns where I've done 8 bars of this, then 10 bars, driven myself crazy. I then hated it later anyway. So my drums at the studio are always going. They're just an idea. They might even just be a click. And I'll lay everything very tightly to that click. Imagining in my head, well, I'm going to have this, I'm going to have that, and then you can go like this. So, yeah, it's really hands-on. It's non-computer, non-sequence. All my music is play, and that's most probably, well, a good side of the fact that I'm not, you know, really hands-on with computers and technology of that ilk, of the normal ilk, what is now become normal. So I'm a bit lagging behind, but I guess the thing I like about it is that I'm only interested in what it sounds like at the end. I'm not really interested. I mean, from a production point of view, I'm very interested if it's in time and it's in tune, you know, the 2 T's, and most probably, you know, the feeling is what I'm after. So, sure, I could most probably make even more music if I'm sitting there with, you know, somebody else doing. But I'm happy with the way I work. It's within my means. It allows me to be completely independent. And I guess working in bands, as I have done since 1962 or something, when the Syndicate started, all that time, with a few occasional year exceptions, I've been in a band working with people, compromising my ideas, trying to get them to compromise their ideas so that it can be more like we want it to be. And when I started on the solo album Quest, if you like, in 1975, it was the first solo album I did, Beginnings, then it was like a whole new world opened up. It was like, wow, okay, I'm going to get, you know, I was realizing the fact that I was going to get the opportunity to do things exactly the way I wanted to, and learn by my own mistakes, and gradually take more and more things on that were around my own music, because I found that I like designating, I like working with very talented people, but in some ways I sometimes don't need an engineer, or I sometimes don't need a producer, because I've learnt those skills along the way, you know, with all the people I've worked with. And I've certainly, you know, not sort of consciously learned from other people, but I definitely know that's how I have. I've just been subconsciously absorbing things right from, you know, some of the early producers that I worked with in the 60s, particularly, you know, Mark Wirtz and other people that, you know, just gave me opportunities. These are the guys that said, you come in the studio and do a guitar overdub session, you know, and I was so thrilled. You know, the first one I ever did, once at EMI, I showed up and there was nobody there, and I was kind of terrified, you know, that it was just me and a guitar and an amp, and the other side of the glass, the producer was saying, well, look, do this, and then play this, and then do that. So I actually, very young, I got a very good sort of inspirational view of what it was like to learn, you know, and I guess I must have got a good learning method, because, you know, there was nothing that anybody did to one of my guitars that I wasn't there going, how did you do that? What did you put on it here? You know, and of course, some people are very puritanical in their recording, like to record something very pure, and then look for the opportunities to kind of take it elsewhere. And other people, as you're recording, might say, "Oh, that would be great with this on it, and let's do a dub of that with this." And so, you know, Billy Sherwood was like that. He was really great when he was engineering Keys to Ascension with us, various parts of it. And we would kick around the guitar and we'd say, yeah, that would be great. So we did a whole track where the guitar was just like affected, then it was dry, then it was spun, then it was reverb, then it was dry again. And it would come up to you and go back and then dominate this way. So, you know, thanks Billy. Everybody I've worked with has teach me something, is doing something with a guitar that I hadn't thought of yet. You know, and you always think you thought of everything. And of course you haven't, because there's just a zillion tricks, and they're not really. I think the tricks of the trade, I like to call them, more than like trickery. So I always had this thing in my mind when I was a kid that I would, whatever my trade was, I would learn all the tricks on it. You and that was my mentality really. A sort of, can I get into something in my life that I can really learn about? And I guess the guitar, even when I was just twiddling with it and fantasizing, I didn't know necessarily that was going to be it straight away. But I suppose by the time I started making records with Joe Meek, I started to think, yeah, this is it. This is everything that I want to do now. I think once I'd gone in the studio, because I played live in the rehearsal room in my bedroom, and I had people say, "Shut up! Will you stop playing that thing?" And all those really encouraging remarks. But I think if you're going to be a musician, that has to be like water off a duck's back, because at all different times in your career, you'll meet the reverse psychology. You'll meet people who say, "I don't like this, take it off." And I think you have to learn to be non-precious, but there again, true to your idea as much as you can get it. So studio work's most probably a kind of saving grace with touring. If you just toured all the time, I think you'd go completely mad. And maybe if you just made records, you'd never know why you made records, because these are the people who buy them. I'm looking at them every night. And that, in a way, is fulfilling for me as an artist, to be in both, to be dualistic like that, to have had some success, with records and some success with touring. So I love that. That's rewarding. That's the result, if you like. People say to me, "What was the best thing that happened? What was the biggest thing that ever happened? Was it this award? Was it that gold album?" And I just think it's not any of those sort of earmarked moments. It's really the result of your work that's satisfying.